In this video, we're going to show you what causes a sports hernia. Hey everyone, I'm Sebastian and this is Don. We're part of the locally world famous chiropractors in Costa Mesa, California. Now we're going to use this model today to show what's going on with the sports hernia. The only thing that's missing in it is really the hip, right Don? Mm-hmm. So the hip has a big part in what's going on with a sports hernia, although people will have symptoms into the front. Before we actually go too far in this video, we want to make sure that you're on the right video. Dawn, can you show what a sports hernia general location may be?
Absolutely. So a lot of times sports hernia can be located maybe in the lower abdomen, but sometimes people will talk about kind of the top of the pubic bone area too. So anywhere along that chain, a lot of times is what people will describe.
Yeah, sometimes people even have stuff into the high adductor region. They may interpret it as an adductor strain, and sometimes they feel things like SI joint tightness and some lower back pain, but not everybody. Some people even feel testicular tightness. I don't know what the female rendition would be. I don't
think we've had that yet.
Yeah, so mainly men will describe that. I'm sure there's a female rendition. Okay, here's what we're going to go with then. The model basically shows you here, this is the pubic symphysis, okay? This is an actual joint, okay? There's the pelvis, the pelvic ring. In this model, it won't actually move, but it can shear. It can move like so. It's not a static ring that doesn't move. It actually does move. In the back is your SI joints and your sacrum, and here's your lumbar spine, okay? What they found is that there's a big correlation with people who don't have good hip range of motion, which throws the hip range of motion that's intended to be in the hip over to the symphysis. And so essentially, if you imagine me here and I got my hip bone and it's not really going through full range, you see how I'm kind of moving the rest of the pelvis. Now it won't move the whole other part, but it'll just shear at this joint right here, which creates local sensitivity around the pubic bone and create local irritation into the adductor and sometimes lower abdomen area. Now, there's also sometimes a tearing of the aponeurosis or the fascia here, all right? The thought is that this is also associated with overuse of the fascial or soft tissue structures, probably also because of a lack of hip internal rotation or a lack of hip function. Now, it's important to note too that this is not an inguinal hernia. They are different things. There's no association with any abdominal contents coming out of the abdominal wall. You won't see anything other than it's a minor swelling. It'll just generally hurt. So now that you know generally the mechanics of it, Don's going to go over a little assessment to figure out how a hip functions to see if it has a relationship with it.
Yeah, absolutely. If we're suspecting this in somebody and we think this is a cause, we don't want to just look at the place where the pain is coming from, but test the hip joint and see if that's truly what's going on. So Seb, can you lay on your belly for me? Your booty facing the camera, actually.
Okay.
There we go. And so we want to look at internal rotation of the hip because a lot of times lack of internal rotation could be one of those things that might be causing it. So we'd come here and we just let the feet drop wide where they naturally want to. Let's say Seb's pain is on his right side here. This one just keeps on going. This one we just can't get any further. This may even reproduce some pain for people, but what we're looking at is the difference from side to side. So we can tell here that this one needs a little bit more range of motion of that internal rotation. I'm going to have you keep your legs where they are here. Can you kick your heel up to the ceiling? What do you feel?
Feel like a little hamstring work, a little butt cheek contraction.
Perfect. And then let's do it on your problem side.
I feel my quad.
Sometimes people will just, you'll notice maybe it doesn't go as far, maybe it's harder. They don't feel the areas that should be activating. They might feel their low back. They might feel that extra stretch in the front side into the quad, maybe possibly into that problem area as well. So those are two things that I would look at for the hip joint. Another thing too, if you come up onto your knees like me, what's leaning backwards feel like? So this is something that we may notice, standing up and leaning back.
Oh, like that?
That's okay. A little extra stretchy into the front side there. It may recreate some discomfort. You may notice some back pain on the side of pain as well. So these are the top 3 things that we notice with people with a true sports hernia. These are some things in their assessment that we can pick up on.
Yeah. So really just solving the problem with sports hernia really comes down to figuring out 3 basic steps. Number one is figuring out a good first aid or a way to decrease sensitivity of the structure, which is actually creating the symptoms. As Dawn showed, the lack of range of motion in my case may not hurt at all. The hip may not hurt at all, it just doesn't work well, while another symptom-generating structure like the pubic symphysis is going under a lot of load and a lot of tension. And so perhaps we find out something which chills that out. Many of you have already found this. Don't do what provokes it. And a lot of you have maybe taken months and months of rest where you say, well, it went away, but it came back. That's where you're missing steps 2 and step 3. Step 2 is corrective exercises, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So we could talk about, yeah, maybe let's get some more mobility into your hip. But a lot of times what that looks like, if you do internet searching, those exercises may help you, but there really are specific ones individualized for each person that we kind of have to trial and error through to figure out what the right ones are for you. That changes your range of motion and that decreases your discomfort, builds support around the area that we're focusing on.
Like a good example of maybe an exercise that wouldn't work for me is pushing the heel to the ceiling, like that. So that one that we just did as an assessment, that's not going to work for me because I didn't feel it in the hamstring and glute. I felt it in the quad, which means that we're allowing compensation to continue if we suggest that exercise.
Yeah.
And then there's strength training or building some challenging exercise into the area too. Dawn, you want to talk a little bit about that for step 3?
Yeah, absolutely. So strength training, there's a time and a place for it. We can modify your strength training during this time so that you stop provoking the issue. But really, it's the number one thing that's going to force your body to adapt. We've got to change your movement patterns first before we load you, though. So we won't strength train right off the bat. We build you into that so that it's not provoking for you. And we want to know what your goals are so that your program is based around that as well.
Yep. Weight training doesn't have to be super, super challenging. It doesn't have to be bodybuilding. It doesn't have to be powerlifting. It just has to be something challenging enough to get you to the goal that you want. That's why we got to know your goals. So if you guys are looking for help, we have consultations available too. And those are virtual or in person. And we figure out if we can help you at all with your case. If we can't help you, we tell you right then and there. But if you guys are looking for more information about hip and groin pain and things that it could be, we have a webinar in the corner which is going to pop up, which is a lot of good free information that you can take advantage and figure out what your diagnostic category is. Many of you probably haven't heard of these 3 diagnostic categories, so I would take advantage of that.
Subscribe to the channel, like this video, and we'll see you next time.